It was just after midnight on a rain-slick highway in Tennessee when Jake Collier's headlights caught a flicker of movement near the shoulder of the road. He squinted through the windshield, wiped the fog from the inside glass with a calloused hand, and eased off the gas. It had been a long haul from Amarillo to Nashville, almost 800 miles of silence, old country music, and too much black coffee. He could have just kept driving. But something, maybe instinct, maybe fate, made him pull over. As he stepped out into the chill, the drizzle kissed his cheeks like ghostly fingers. There, trembling in the downpour, was a dog. A golden retriever, muddy and thin, its ribs showing beneath matted fur, one paw lifted like it was hurt. Jake's heart clenched. He wasn't a dog person, or at least that's what he always told himself. He had too many miles to drive and too much pain buried under his denim jacket to make room for something that needed love. Still, he knelt down and whistled softly. The dog's ears perked, hesitated, then limped toward him, eyes wide with fear and trust at once. Jake wrapped it in an old flannel shirt and lifted it gently into the cab of his truck. "All right, buddy," he said, climbing back behind the wheel. "Looks like you're riding with me now." What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that this moment would begin a journey far greater than any delivery route. It would unravel the knots in his soul and offer a kind of healing he never thought he deserved. Jake named the dog Chance. It felt right. Maybe because he was giving the mutt a second chance. Or maybe, deep down, he sensed that he was the one being saved. The first challenge was simple survival. Chance was sick. Jake spent the last of his pay on a vet visit in Little Rock. The diagnosis wasn't great: malnourishment, infection, a fractured paw. Jake sat in the waiting room, fists clenched, feeling more helpless than he had in years. When the vet gave him the bill, Jake winced. But he paid it. He slept in his truck that night instead of a motel, wrapped in that same flannel, Chance curled up beside him. As the days passed, something shifted. Chance grew stronger. Jake began talking to him during long drives through the Rockies and across the plains. At first, it was just idle chatter. But soon, Jake found himself telling stories he hadn't voiced in years. About his daughter, Emily, who stopped calling after the divorce. About the accident that took his brother's life when Jake was behind the wheel. About the guilt that had driven him away from everyone who ever loved him. Chance never interrupted. He just listened, his head resting on Jake's thigh, eyes full of silent understanding. One night, parked outside a diner in Nebraska, Jake noticed a little girl staring at Chance through the window. Her mother stood nearby, wearing the weary look of someone balancing too many jobs and not enough sleep. The girl approached slowly, and Chance, gentle and calm, wagged his tail and let her pet him. Jake struck up a conversation with the mother, and learned she'd lost her husband the year before. They talked over coffee until sunrise. She said talking to Jake reminded her that there were still kind people in the world. And Jake realized, so did he. Word began to spread. Truckers across states began recognizing Jake and Chance. Someone snapped a photo of them in Oklahoma, Chance's head sticking out the window of the rig, and it went viral. The dog who rides shotgun was what they called him. A reporter tracked Jake down at a truck stop in Missouri and asked for their story. Jake told the truth. That he was just a broken man who found a broken dog. That they'd been healing each other, 1 mile at a time. Offers came in, sponsorships, interviews, even a children's book deal. But Jake turned them all down. That wasn't the point. Instead, he started a nonprofit called Second Chance Freight, a small charity that used donations to rescue and rehome animals found along trucking routes. Jake began recruiting other long-haul drivers, giving them basic pet care training and coordinating with shelters. Within a year, they had rescued over 300 animals. Drivers who once rode in silence now had loyal companions beside them, and stories of their own healing to tell. But perhaps the most important moment came on a fall afternoon outside Atlanta. Jake was fueling up when his phone rang, a number he hadn't seen in years. "Hi, Dad," said a hesitant voice on the other end. "I saw the article about you and Chance. I'd love to talk." Jake's voice cracked. "Emily? Is that really you?" And just like that, the last wall around his heart began to crumble. 3 weeks later, father and daughter met at a dog park in Chattanooga. Emily brought her son, Jake's grandson. He was 5, and he fell in love with Chance instantly. They walked together that afternoon, 3 generations and a dog who had once been left to die alone on a dark highway. Jake knew now that life didn't always give you clean beginnings. Sometimes, it gave you wreckage. But out of that wreckage, if you were lucky, came redemption. He looked down at Chance, who looked back up at him with the same unwavering eyes. "Good boy," Jake whispered. Because saving that dog didn't just change Jake's life. It gave it back.